Welcome everyone. I'm super excited to be here with you all today. I see that we have quite a few people here in the room that are interested in submitting to the Stellar Community Fund. So big claps for yourselves here for showing up. I will quickly, so we had a kind of more of an overview session earlier this week on Monday, and we actually that covered everything that is what's new with the Stellar Community Fund. Today we're not going to go into that specifically, and we have also, if you want to watch that, we have a recording and I posted it in the general channel. But today we will actually walk through the submission for SCF Awards, and I will provide some great and insightful tips and tricks to create a submission worth exploring. And this is really important in the SCF because there will be, now we have submission deadlines every 4 weeks. There will be a lot of submissions that are coming in, and the review panel has limited time to view each submission. So you have to make sure that the submission makes sense and has enough information, and it's just also very exciting concept of fun. So let's get started. So when you click Start Your Submission, basically you will be routed to this page. This is a submission page. At first, there will be some, so I already skipped these, but there will be some legal acknowledgements in the submission form itself that you will need to click Accept. And probably also before you even get to that, you will actually need to log into this platform called Submittable. Now, Submittable is it's a submission form platform. It's our new platform that we're working with this starting in 2023, and it makes a lot of things a lot easier. And so I will go through the things, but obviously before you submit, you have to make sure to go to the handbook and actually read the official rules for submission. So I'm going to quickly walk through these rules that are closely connected with the legal acknowledgements, so you are aware where they are and what is required. So starting with participant eligibility, there are so if you read through this, we do have an age limit, a minimum age, sorry. And there are some jurisdictions and regions that SDF cannot send cryptocurrency funding to at this moment. So also, you are on the sanctions list or some blocked list by OFAC. Yeah, unfortunately, we are not allowed to send any funds to you. But it is most likely that you will be eligible, but just making sure. Then going on to the submission eligibility. Now each round will be open to all kinds of projects and companies intending to build on Stellar and Sorbonne that are beneficial to both the ecosystem and also especially those that further kind of the mission to create equitable access to the global financial system. So there are, I think some of the requirements are very, very standard. It needs to be of high quality, clear in language, and rich in technical details. And especially the last part is important. And we'll see in a minute where you can add those technical details in the submission form. This is very, 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 very important. This is the SCF, right? So this is not an investor or an accelerator that isn't that looks more generally at your business idea. The SCF will especially look to your idea and how Stellar or Sorbonne is integrated into the project. So let's say if we see projects coming around and they have just added Stellar or Sorbonne as a word for hype, it's very easy to notice, and those projects will likely not get selected, even if they have good business models. The Stellar and Sorbonne part is one of the most important elements of the submission, and also has to significantly improve your project's core features. So let's say if you have a startup, but like Stellar or Sorbonne or blockchain in general doesn't add that much value to your project, you cannot just, it doesn't make sense for you to get funding to to build out your project. It has to also be of significant value to your project or product or startup. That said, you don't have to have a fully built out project yet to even start submitting. If you have a well-researched or tested concept, a minimum viable product, or a high-level architecture model, these are also fine. You just have to really prove that you have the right plan and the right intent to build your Stellar and Sorbonne project. And this includes doing sufficient research into these technologies. Then we also have the requested budget, right? So in the funding, in the submission form, you will see that we will request a budget, and this is attached to the budget guidelines. And we'll actually go into this specifically in the submission form in a bit. You might have to make sure that it's unique and competitive, clear value to the ecosystem. There are some resubmission guidelines as well. I'm not going into today, but making sure that it's here. And it is very important that your team, you can prove that your team has a proven experience with relevant languages or technologies used in the project. For Sorbonne, this is Rust. So if you don't have that experience yet, either try to get a developer on board that does have that, or have a clear deliverable around that, whatnot. So there are some categories of ineligible projects, and this is also very important to take a look at. Aside from the standard an ineligibility project, there's also like the gambling side. You cannot add any gambling project that include gambling. We just are not allowed to fund that. And also you have to be careful if, like, let's say, projects that promote a specific token or a specific NFTs or NFT collections that doesn't have like a clear value aside from just, I guess, like from the value of the token itself. If there's not a clear use case, it is likely that your project won't get accepted. Like we do really focus on impact. So that is just something to take note of. Then there are some notes for like specific projects. So I would just take a look at this information. We'll look at this later. So without further ado, let's actually go into the submission form itself, and then I'll go back in a bit. But are there any questions on these? I guess, like, let me go back on these general eligibility guidelines before I continue.
When you're speaking about regulations, is it regarding the US or the local regulations?
It's the US regulations that a Stellar Development Foundation is subject to. That said, let me quickly go through here. If, let's say, also, for example, this one, if it also applies in your specific jurisdiction, right? So basically, and it's mostly, I think a lot of these laws also are subject to live in user-facing, like public to users projects, right? Because then that's when you actually, I think like as long as you if you are publishing or launching a live product to users, you should have a good understanding of what at least a lawyer or whatnot, to have an understanding that what the products that you are offering is within the local the other regulations of the local jurisdiction. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I wanted to ask another question. So it's common that financial services usually require special licensing. I'm talking about Europe. Does this mean that we have to have license for submission?
So I think like if the submission, this depends a little on kind of what I said earlier. So if your submission, deliverables are scoped to a let's say a proof of concept or building out the like a prototype of the service, because right now, for example, on Sorban, even in 3 months, you would not have a live product, right? Because it's not even on Sorban mainnet. So all you would probably get is a prototype on testnet. And so for that, it is not live to users yet. So whenever it's not live to users yet, you don't need a license, you know what I'm saying? But once you put it live to users and you intend to launch it to users, yes, there are local regulations and that you will need to abide by. And this is, yeah, it's a tough subject, to be honest, because like it's for SDF, because you know, we cannot give any legal guidance to projects. So it is kind of on the project itself to find out what the regulations are around this. And that said, yeah.
Yes, so it makes sense to add the legal fees into like budget section of the project.
The legal fees to like for research, you mean?
No, I mean like fees for the company registration, let's say fees for the lawyer to get the license, all the expenditure related to the compliance regulations.
Yeah, I think like indeed that can definitely be in scope in certain projects, especially like let's say if you're, it depends a bit on the kind of, so the budget is actually set for, let me see, let's actually go through the budget guidelines. So the budget is actually set for when you, for development, to boost development of the product itself. Now, a lot of times, and ideally, a lot of this is actually to do with the actual hours of work that your engineers are putting into the project. But indeed, there's also some, you know, like cases where the kind of like the company itself is all related to this project, and it's not just a part of the project, it's like all product. There's a lot of different type of project in SCF, so that's why I'm kind of mentioning this. And then it makes sense to also indeed add those costs. But I do want to add a caveat that SCF funding is not meant to sustain projects, but it's really meant to boost the development of it and kind of get you to a point where yeah, you can launch it, right? Yeah. So yeah, does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yes, so we account like legal fees for a part of launch of the product, let's say for some banking application.
Yeah, I
Because,
think I would
yeah,
I would definitely see that could be a part of it. It's just like as long as it's not so SCF funding is not really meant, and you can see that too in my screen, it's not really meant to cover costs associated with user acquisition, right? So that is more like, it's more really like everything like before launch to get you ready to boost development. That's really what SCF funding is for. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we also have one question in the chat from Matthias, who asks, any special fine print on eligibility related to education-oriented projects? And Matthias, so we are actually on the right page right now. Therefore, so a lot of the projects built on Stellar are either like tools or payment services or applications or services or whatnot. But there, we also recognize that in the SCF, there's real benefit in having kind of community and education organizations kind of developing these resources and hosting events for their community, because it spreads the word of Stellar and Sorban and in ways that SDF could never have accomplished. There is a smaller budget for this, because we do really put most of the focus on the actual like teams, like building projects and organizations, but there is a budget for it. And I would definitely say we don't have like any, like specific, how I would say like how these educational organizations would actually be set up. But basically, like as long as it's like has clear deliverables and focus on Sorban, and it's bigger than, let's say, a tutorial, because a tutorial needs to be it would be better suited for something like Surabonathon, right? But it's like an organization that is, organizing like monthly things or something. Yeah. Matthias, does that answer your question?
Yep, totally.
Okay, so sanction countries. I think one, for any questions related to the sanctioned countries, I would just send an email to communityfund@stellar.org. I'm not an expert on our legal on the law, so I would need to actually get someone from our legal team involved. Yeah, so I would just send an email with your specific request. All right, well, let's get started actually going through the submission form because that's what we're all here for. And we're going to stay, I'm going to be here until 3 p.m., so that's in the next 40 minutes. So there will be enough time for questions afterwards as well. All right, let's get going. So after the legal acknowledgements, there's actually, I guess, another 5 categories that you can fill out. It is indeed not a small submission form, but the nice part is that you can actually save your progress. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the form, you can see Save Draft. And this is a really handy feature if you kind of want to, pick up, write a bit, and then go back to the form later. Just make sure that once you're ready to submit, you actually do hit the submit button, because otherwise I will not receive it. And we will also send you, if you have saved your drafts, we will also send you kind of reminders for the next submission deadline. So don't worry. All right, and so kind of going through this, right? There's also this handy Manage Collaborators button. So let's say if it's not only you on your team, but you have more people that you want to add to the submission form and kind of collaborate in real time, you can add their email address here, and then they will also have access to the same submission form. So it's a really handy feature. So definitely make sure to do that if that's of interest of you. All right, so the first section is actually going to be project information. So keep in mind your SCF. So let's say if you are submitting from a company, your SCF submission or project is not your company or team, but it is it's a very focused application that focuses on the integration or feature built on Stellar or Sorbonne. And it should be around a 3 months long project in scope of work wise. So let's say if you have a company called or have a company, don't put the company name here, but really think about what your project is about, and then you can add the name to your project here. And actually it will show up quite nicely if you do have a company name. It will be like your project name, and then it says by company name. So it works out really nice. So make sure to pick a really nice name, something that kind of sparks joy. You know what I'm saying? Like it's an important element because it's one of the first things that people see. Like keep it short, relevant, and memorable. Something that kind of means says what it is, but also something that could be, you can make this one a little bit marketable, as we say. All right, so then the next one is actually add a 1-sentence pitch on your project. This is really important because basically you have to remember that the reviewers that are reviewing, and also the community members, right? They don't have that much time. They have limited bandwidth to look at projects. And so they want to get a really good, clear explanation, within, let's say, a few seconds of looking at your submission. And so that's what this sentence is about. It's basically, and I have a format here as well, kind of develops, offers, or gives, what you offer, the product you offer. Who are you helping your audience? What's problem are you solving for your audience? And kind of how do you do it, like the secret sauce. And I've put some more examples in this blog post as well that you can take a look at. But basically anything that is super clear, and avoid throughout the application, definitely avoid any marketing speak. You don't need you don't need to, I guess, sell us. We are not your users. So your audience to the submission is not your users. It is reviewers that of your product. So you can be very clear and you don't need to do much marketing. You can be very blunt and say what it is, because that's what will help you. That's what will really help you going forward. All right, well, this one is fairly straightforward. Please indicate which of the below applies to you. So if you're new, you click new, and then there's some guidance here for if you're a previous winner for another project, blah, blah, blah. Make sure to add this. Let's say I'm new. Then which of the following categories fit best with your project? And this is actually really important because I can show you where this will come up to. Let me see, community fund, stellar.org. If you go to projects, you see these very nice little filtering mechanisms here. So let's say cross-border payments, right? You can see that those have been connected to that particular collection. So when you do fill these out, make sure to add, let's say if you're building on Soroban, definitely add Soroban, right? If you're building on payments, add payments, and etc. I wouldn't add too many because that will kind of dilute your submission a bit and be very focused on what you are trying to do. All right, so if you are building on Soroban, which of the following categories fit your project? And this is can be a bit difficult to reach. If you have difficulty filling this out, just let us know on the SCF Discord. It's basically, we are using this to measure how we are doing towards building a minimum viable Soroban ecosystem. And these are some of the categories that we identified as necessary elements of that one. So yeah, just please just choose whichever makes the most sense to you and to your project. And then we go into the most exciting part of this whole, well, actually not the most exciting part, but one of them, which is the products and services. So the actual project description of what you are building. And so this is a really important section because this is the one that you will definitely need to beef up a little bit. You need to explain what the product or service is, what problem it solves, how it solves them, and what audience it solves them for. So really explain the benefits of this. And very, 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 very important, how it works and how it uses Stellar and or Soroban. Really get into the specifics here. Don't just shoehorn Stellar or Soroban words in your submission because they will be refused. And I will show you some examples of some good ones. This is a previous winner called Beans app. You can see their products and services is a very nice format here. They're explaining the problem. They're explaining, and they're guiding the reader through how their product works. Sending money, right? There's a nice little thing here. Requesting money, opening up a savings account. So there's many different things, and this is one of the ways that you can fill out this section. To be honest, with Soroban, I don't have any example submission to show just yet. But I would be as technical as you can, really get technical in this submission. And this is actually a project called Stellar Carbon, and I kind of because I did some research earlier today to see which of the products I wanted to highlight. And definitely, as you can see here are some. I mean, this is a little. This is a forgot the name, but the kind of a walkthrough of how a process map of how their product works. And I think that those are definitely, and that's actually an image which we'll come to a bit later, but those are really important pieces to add to your submission to help the reviewers and also the broader community should your project be chosen to move forward. To understand them how your product works and if it makes sense and whatnot. So let me see. Okay, that is for another thing I want to explain. And then yeah, definitely that is kind of part of the you can add any types of images of the product to the description here. It will actually show in a slider format. So definitely do that. One thing I will note is that please do not upload the size of above 4 megabytes, unfortunately, like the Webflow, the user that we use to showcase these submissions, they don't allow them. So like these images, like if they're larger than 4 megabytes, they would literally not show up. Also, I recommend to have it. Good point to me. But I would do a dimensions of 16:9. So it's like a general like screen format, just because that's the best way that these will show up. All right, and then there's a few more questions on this in this product section. So what is the current stage of your product? This is a simple one. So let's say if you're still researching your integration, and it's probably going to be a lot of the project in Sorbonne right now, you're going to choose research, develop, and if you're already actively building out, if we haven't launched yet, to users, development, and there's 2 more, introduction and growth, but they're more for like larger product. I think that the majority will actually be here, and choosing either one of these is not going to like impact the review. It just gives extra information on where you are in the stage of your project. So please fill out honestly. And then you can also add any additional information. So let's say if the previous view, and add a pitch deck. So these are kind of the 2 optional fields here. Even though they're optional, I definitely encourage you to use both of them because they will just provide extra context to your platform. And we've put together, as you can see here, some of the some guidelines around how to fill this out. This is totally up to you, and just so if you don't know what to say any more about your project, here are some inspiration. So if let's say you are planning to launch a user-focused project, and it's going to be you're wanting to set up for a long term, it's not just a prototype, then definitely add something about your revenue model and funding, like how will you survive? Please note, remember, SCF is not meant to sustain any projects, it's meant to boost development, right? So definitely, if you're in that stage, add more context. Market and industry research, this is very important. And competition, these two work. So why is your project better than others? How will you operate in your industry? Why do you think your project will succeed with users? Is there a current market need? How big is the market? This is it's kind of like general startup stuff, right? Where you can really kind of do your research. So aside from technical implementation, it is really really strong if you can showcase what is already out there and why is your product better. Because a lot of times when reviewers will look through all of the project, we will see oh, okay, it's another wallet, or why is this one better, right? Why are people going to use this wallet over a wallet that's already very popular with users in the ecosystem or beyond, right? So make sure that you show people that you have done your research. Who are your competitors? Why is your solution better? And let's say if you have a totally an innovative solution where you don't have competitors, show that you've done the research, that there's actually a market need for the product that you have. And if you can even show more details, such as if you can showcase that you've already looked in some of the, the threats and opportunities, such as the government regulations or technology, economy, it shows all the more that you have done your homework to make your project a success, right? And that said, these elements, your research should not block your progress. So sometimes, when happens oh, you're doing too much research, and then actually you think oh, maybe I should change my whole submission. I don't think that's the case. I think you should kind of as soon as you have something, it's good, just submit it. Because as soon as you can get it out to people, the more chances you have to actually talk with people about it. They can give feedback, and it will help you improve your product. So yeah, so not too much research. But yeah, enough to make sure that the reviewers, are convinced that your product and how it's going to succeed. Then also resources and relationships are very important. If you let's say if you were like more of a classic Stellar, like I guess a vanilla Stellar is a better word, project, you can really say, like, let's say, oh, you're working already with existing anchors, or you have already talked with existing anchors in the Stellar ecosystem, or you are, let's say, working together with other SCF projects towards the same goal, or some kind of collaboration, or I mean, even outside of the Stellar ecosystem, if you work with a notable partner, or you have some kind of validation from such partners and unique relationships, this is really going to validate your submission. And let's say if you are a user-focused submission form, you can add something about your kind of like a marketing plan, like how will you reach your users, through what channels, and kind of how will you convert prospects into customers. And let's say a lot of times, like, we also get tools, and then it's like, yeah, I don't quite have like users, If you're building out a tool of the SDK, like, your users will be developers, you will have users in that sense. And so how will you do outreach? Like, how will you get them to use your product? Will you use Discord, or, target communities, or like, how will you get feedback? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like, there's always some way you can implement any of these recommendations here. Okay, and then alternatively, you can also, can either do this or that or both. You can add a pitch deck. Pitch decks are really great. People usually look at pitch decks, and they can kind of sum up and put a lot of content in a very nice format. If you are, let's say, like Anke, like, I'm really not creative, like I'm really not sure what to add on these pitch decks. There's this very handy tool called Canva. They have a lot of great templates where you just have to, like, I guess switch out some of the text, and then you can have a great looking pitch deck. It's also like creating pitch decks, actually, I've noticed, is a very great way to kind of consolidate what you're trying to say in your submission, and really focus on what's important. So even if you don't end up uploading it, it's a great way to just make one and just add it to here. All right, so these two questions, they're a bit more for internal purposes. So as you know, like, we really want to focus on impact and on diversity. So we kind of want to know where you're at, like, what is your region of focus of operation, and if your project will mainly serve an underserved audience. This is not going to actually impact your submission or review in any way. It's just for us to know, to track. Yeah. So that was the products and services product and project information section. And I'm going to briefly pause here to make sure if there's any questions so far on this particular section that I can answer from the group. Any questions? See, I see someone typing. I'm up to date. Nice. PS says, are all submissions made public, or just if accepted? Yes, so this is a very good question. So actually, if the project submissions, and you can see this in the, let me see, if you go here and a handbook, we have this timeline here. So once they pass initial submission review and participant eligibility check, they will actually be posted on the project's page, which you can see on this very page, and then for the community to view. But there will be so some of the so let's see, I don't think it's in here, but definitely in certain areas, if the question kind of description says, see, it's somewhere here. Yeah, let's say here. So what is the full legal name of the submitters? This is just something that we need for legal purposes, but this is for internal use only. So for SDF and to certain, like, select individuals at SDF only, and will not be shown in your public project page. So those you should look out for. That will not be on your project page. Yeah. Are those occasions the favored underserved? I'm not sure if I understand your questions correctly, but let me see, go back to the question. This is kind of like, so let's say if you have a user focused, or you are planning to have a user focused app, and you, let's say, are focusing to have your app in, let's say, like Brazil, and for like audience, and your audience is located in Brazil, you can check this box, Latin America and Caribbean, for instance. Yeah, it's just we want to track where it lives. Julius asks, is the pitch deck an optional or mandatory need for the submission? No, it is totally optional. If you don't want to add it, that's totally fine as well. It's just that like pitch decks, especially, like, are just a great way to format your information differently into a nicer format, and they will be on the project page. Actually, this is something new that we're adding this time. Like, you can find this in the previous submissions. We have indeed done some improvements to our submission platform. Good for noticing, Braulio. So that is something extra we're offering, but it is indeed optional. Very recommended. Yes. I mean, to be honest, if the field, if the question is on here, I highly recommend to fill it out, right? Even though it's optional. Yes. Great. All right. Well, we are going to, yes, Tim, he said, I do it. Yeah, definitely do it. Even if it's a short deck. I mean, I think like for decks especially, you can really like dive into technical details and those process maps and just reiterate how things work. You know, it's just a great way. And Canva, actually, like if you go use canva.com, I think it's here. There's like free things they can build here. It's really easy. I don't want to advertise Canva, but it's like, if you like, it's the easiest way to make like a really nice deck, basically. Yeah, so no advertisement here. It's just a fan. All right, so let's go into the third section, deliverables and budget. And so this is actually what I meant last time, was saying it's, you know, the product information is almost the most exciting section. This section is one of the most exciting sections of this submission form. It's because basically making sure that you understand the proof of intent, and I'll quickly walk through it. So as you know, and I also walked through this in a previous session, after you pass the initial review phase and the participant eligibility checks, there's this phase called proof of intent. And so basically, after your KYC has been passed, you will receive 10% of your total budget request to prove your intent and submit and work on, I guess, complete your first deliverable. And so so that's when we go into deliverables here, and you can find this in here in the budget guidelines, deliverables and budget. And the first deliverable is very important because it has to have a budget attached that is 10% of your project total requested budget, and should also kind of like in amount of like hours of work also reflect 10% of the total project scope of work. So let's see, you can see here, for instance, like I made this, and there will be a grid, and you can see that kind of here. But let's first do the first deliverable. It says, what is your first deliverable? And I pasted it here again because it was actually like we did a pilot, and this was one of the questions that for half of the time wasn't filled out correctly, which is fine. I think it was more like our language in here as well, and it's a new concept. But making sure that you kind of really think through, and if you want to, you can definitely start here and then fill out your first deliverable later. But the first deliverable is basically something that you can build, likely because of the timing, around 2 weeks. That will be 10% of your total project workload, and will have an attached budget of 10% of your total project budget attached to it as well. And so this is something that you can relatively complete like easily. It does have to have Soroban. So like it's something, if you, let's say, are building the whole project on Soroban, I will definitely do something on Soroban. It can be either like a plan, or it can be all sorts of things. But in any case, like making sure that you divide up the work correctly, and that's the very first step. And then you can actually add some description here on what it is and how you will need to complete it. But then, very important, the reviewer will need to be able to successfully check that you completed your first deliverable. So how can they what are the steps to complete it? And so this is also something that we call acceptance criteria, right? Like, what are the criteria that the first deliverable needs to abide by to be able to be completed, right? So it should be something like let's say, like, oh, we created this plan, and then viewer checks, okay, yeah, he did create the plan, and these are things they said they would add are added. Now, then that's the first deliverable. So here, let's say, like, and I have a very, if you go back to budget, there's actually a kind of like a standard. This is like, you can fill out this kind of like how you want, but this is like a standard format that you can kind of add. And here's like the overall deliverable, the item of the kind of like deliverable items, so like sub items. These will be sub items of the actual deliverable, and kind of how you will measure this, because the measurement is very important. And then when you think you can complete it by, these are estimated dates, and these are also estimated hours of work, right? But you kind of have to put in some thinking of like how much work will you put to each of the deliverables. And if, let's say, you want to instead put, the hours attached to deliverable itself and not itemized, that's also fine. Just making sure that at the end of the day, you only count the hours, I guess, once. So don't add another like 60 here, because then they will count up to the total. It's like an automatic counting mechanism. It's kind of nifty, but make sure to not add double amounts. And then, also counts up the total project budget. And just to reiterate here, you can see here that the first deliverable is actually $1,000, was actually 10% of the total project budget, in this case, 10,000. Yeah. So yeah, again, make sure to not double fill these items. And this is kind of like a good overview of how to do this. That said, and if you want, actually, because like you can see that these things are a little bit small, you can actually open it up. I also highly recommend, like, if you, let's say, want to, this is not like the best interface either, so you can also like put this quickly, let's say, in a little like spreadsheet or a Google Sheet or something, and then work on it and then Google paste, a copy paste. That's also that might also be fine. And we left enough room here. You don't need to fill it all out. We just left enough room for you to add sub items. And it also depends a little bit, like, depending on the budget, like how many deliverables you want to add. I would for sure add just at least at a few, right? And depending on your budget, you can add more. You can be like, the higher the budget, like the more granular you need to be in this section, right? So if, let's say, you have 10,000 budget, then it's like, okay, add a few things here, makes sense, right? As long as the first deliverable is 1,000, you can add a few, that's fine. But if your budget is $150,000, which is the very top of the budget, you need to be a lot more granular and put a lot more thought into your deliverables and budget. Yeah, and then just to make sure, like, once you've done that, count the total budget, put it right here. Let's say 10,000. Oh, that's crazy. I don't know how it automatically felt like that. Oh, because I think that it's a minimum. I put it fancy. So yeah, that's this section. Very important. A lot of people actually will likely look over this. So I'm going to quickly pause here and see if anyone has any questions. All right. Okay, Braulio has a question here. If we have completed and changed some of the technical scopes in the development from a previous application, should we add it in at the deliverable section for context, or should we add this context in the link that was provided? Okay, yeah. So Braulio, actually, the link that was sent to you, this is actually something internal, so that will not be shown on your project page. Let's say if you are resubmitting, right, you actually have to say project, let me see. Either like project resubmission or I think previous winner. Yeah, see, and then they will actually show up what progress or modifications have you made since the last time you submitted. So that's actually in the beginning of the form, and you will add that here. The deliverables this is really like what this says. What are the deliverables for your project for the next 2 to 4 months, right? And also with resubmissions, you do have to finish your previous deliverables. And that's especially true going forward. We cannot totally enforce it retroactively, but definitely if you make sure that you add in this section that and kind of really prove that you have done sufficient work according to your budget that you set last time to your submission, like that should be totally fine. And make sure to add metrics here and any kind of detail that will make sense. Okay, let me see. Okay, great. Yeah, perfect. Great. I answered your question, Braulio. Anyone have any questions on this particular one? And I can actually, while people are asking questions, I can go quickly through this this budget guidelines as well. And so you can see here that there's a budget range in US dollar. And please make sure so every SCF award, because we have it here in US dollars, but that's more for the stable valuation. They will actually be paid out in XLM on the day of, and then you can see here the valuation. They will be calculated using the spot price. So just so you are aware, these awards will be paid out in XLM on the day of, an equal value of the dollar amount. And there's also, we did add a max annual in USD. I mean, this is a maximum. The thing is, I don't think that many projects, I don't think a lot of projects are going to actually get to the maximum, because SCF, that will be for the very, very kind of projects that do a crazy amount of development in this year, right? And because the project funds, they should cover only development only. So yeah, that's just and kind of if you're but what budgets should I actually consider? How high should I go? This depends on a lot of things, but majorly on 2 things. The scope of the project, so how much work will it actually take to build it, because it's development, right? So focus on development hours here. And what is the impact of the project once live, right? And I think these are the 2 things that will really decide how high or how low to set your budget. So let's say you are working on a small developer tool, and you're you're not sure if it's gonna have users yet, but it seems with Sorbonne it's a good idea, and you're the only one working on it, perhaps a little part-time as well. You can set it to the very bottom of this budget, and that's totally fine. That said, let's say you are a larger company, and you are providing with other products of yours already great, you have a lot of users and provide a lot of impact to the ecosystem, and the project that you are planning to set up will also have a lot of impact. So you can launch it quickly to a lot of users, for instance, or how much people will affect it, or will it be a substantial building block for the Sorbonne ecosystem to allow a lot of projects to set up correctly. That's impact of the project. Yeah, let me see. Oh, someone is unmuted. Ruth, I believe you are unmuted. Did you have a question?
No, sorry.
All right. Okay, well, let's see. Oh, Miguel has a question here. Each deliverable item has an estimated completion date. Suppose a project passes the participant eligibility check. Is it delivered to SCF only once the deliverable date is fully completed, or should each deliverable item be delivered on that specific completion date? That's a really great question. Actually, it's only the first deliverable, and the estimated date, to be honest, is just to give you a, so let's go back here. The estimated date is just to give you a really great overview of what, kind of plan your work out. So as long as these dates, they kind of align with the amount of work that is needed, it is fine. We do ask, and we do recommend that and I think I put it here as well. So the estimated date of completion, you count it from the time that it takes to complete from a week or 2 weeks after the submission deadline. Because you can see here in the timeline that once the submission deadline is here, it takes a week for initial submission review. So you will know if you have been accepted after a week after the submission deadline. That said, obviously we are still going through KYC checks, but let's say if you can be for 99% sure that you are not on the sanctions list, or you're not from any of the countries that have issues, that you should have no problem passing this check. So then you can already start building, right? And ideally, the first deliverable is something that you can submit during the next submission deadline. So you will have like 2 to 3 weeks to actually decide to actually build it out and submit it to the next one. That said, if you don't get it done within 2 to 3 weeks and something came up or whatnot, like there is no, like you can submit it to future rounds. That said, if you haven't submitted within, and I think like it's somewhere here, it must be somewhere here. Yeah. So here it is. If you don't submit your proof of intent within 6 months of receiving the initial award, you will need to just resubmit your entire submission, because that is too late, right? So there's quite some flexibility in that. It is the first deliverable. This kind of whole process is set around that you can move through it and submit your proof of intent to the next submission deadline. And please note that all of these submission deadlines will be here. So like March 13th, they will be every 4 weeks. So if you look at the calendar, the next one will be April, like something, around the 13th or the 12th, depending on when the Sunday is. And then 4 weeks from then, and then 4 weeks from then, at least until June, there will be 4 weeks rounds in that sense. So there's a lot of opportunities to submit. Let me see. Does that answer your question? And just to reiterate, so that's only for the first deliverable. If you pass, let's say, if you pass, so you see you created your first, you submitted to the next submission deadline, you actually created your completed your first deliverable and you submitted it. That's called proof of intent, right? Then we will review, like someone from the selection panel will review that you have successfully completed it, and there's also some chance. So let's say if you did start building on SCF or on your project, and you realize that your deliverables, or like you want to add something to your initial submission, you can also do that. That will also be reviewed. Then it will go to community vote, which is 1 week. Currently, the selection panel will take the voting results into account, but they are not decisive, just because we are currently like ideating on a whole entire new voting mechanism to make sure that we can actually like put it in this process. But it's very different from what we've done last time. That's kind of like on another whole separate conversation. But basically, once it passed that, and like generally like your whole project, you look good. You still have that same like great intent, and you have the great submission, and the proof of intent was great. There should be no issue actually getting your full award. And then the full award is kind of interesting. SCF awards are, and it's in a way no strings attached, where we cannot claw back any funding afterwards. So let's say if you can choose to completely like ignore SCF project and let's say, okay, now I have the funding and run away. That said, obviously you will be shamed for that in the community. Because the funding is meant to really support your Stellar and Sorbonne project, and if you continue to build on SCF and your project, you can resubmit again, and then there's this whole like world of opportunity that opens up for you. But yeah, you don't need to submit, like let's say you only need to submit your deliverables once you resubmit again, and then you have to prove that you have completed your entire like project, or like, let's say if your deliverables needed to change for some reason, some valid reason, like, things happened or like code or whatnot, then you just add a valid reason to that. And as long as it's like sufficient progress and like makes sense what the budget that you received, you will be able to resubmit. And those details can be found in this section. All right, sorry, that was a lot of talking. Bobby, is voting different to previous SCF rounds? Yes, it will be quite different. We don't have a lot of information related to the voting model, but we are currently working on that in the Verify member panel. Will there be live pitches like round 11? Yes, there will actually be project pitches. So we have actually held a pilot round of SCF 12. It's kind of like a little secret because we haven't been able to publish about it yet, but soon I think we should be able to give more information on that. And I think we should also host some kind of like community project pitches. That's correct. So they will be coming. All right. Currently, what is Sandbox? Yeah. Okay. So Julia says we're currently working with Stellar Anchor. Would going from the Sandbox of the Anchor to the actual production environment be considered a good first deliverable, assuming we validate the idea? Yeah, I mean, if that sounds like you can get it done in like 2 to 3 weeks, that would be a great first deliverable, right? So definitely just make sure that it makes sense to the amount of work that you know, the 10% of the total project scope, and that it has an attached budget of 10% of the total project budget. Yeah. All right. Well, it seems like I'm a little bit going long today, so apologies for that. I can keep talking about this because I designed it, and I'm continuously improving on the submission form, so I know it inside and out. But this section, the links and visual assets, is also really important. And a lot of people actually look over this section and think, oh, you know, I put in all of the text, whatnot. This is a really important section. So especially if you have like any outside resources that can validate your submission, let's say a URL for your project, even like a simple like website or a GitHub or anything really that you can add here is really helpful, because people really click on these links because they want to see if your project is like legit or something. And then you have another resource that can back up what you said in your submission form. Also, just so you know, make sure okay, I'm fine. Yeah, make sure that you what you have on your submission form does correspond with what is on your URL. So let's say if you're, I mean, obviously, if you're describing a new product in the submission form, that is obviously different. But if it's like totally something else, like that is definitely a reason for concern. To make sure to you know, have your text be correspondent with your submission form for any relevant sections that overlap. And then there's also, you can add a link to, let's say, your demo. So some of the, and this is optional. And let's say if you have a kind of a project that's up and running, you have a little like beta or like a demo or something that people can test out. Kind of, you can add the link here. You don't need to, don't add the same link as the project URL, but if it's different, then you have one. Or if there's a specific YouTube link that you want to add here that is the demo, that is not like your project YouTube link, because there's a separate one for that, you can add it here. And similarly, this attaches to your open source code. So if you have open source code, please share it, because like we have reviewers that can review code, and we also like have so make sure that you actually like, if you want to add it, make sure to add it, and we have reviewers that can take a look at it, and it can really help, especially if you're, let's say, not so good at the description part and the business model. Like open source code can really help validate your project, right? And add any other applicable links. So if you have like a bit more of a live product, you can add social, like Twitter, GitHub, anything that kind of like is about your project. Then there's the thumbnail for the project gallery, and this is really important, as you can see. Let's see, I'm not here. Let me see projects. So you can see here, there's some very, you know, really nice thumbnails here. You know, thumbnails are, believe it or not, really important in your submission. Obviously, the submission content is most important, but if you want to make sure that, you know, make a submission worth exploring, the first thing people see is these thumbnails. And just, you can go through here and like think about who would you click on, right? Like, what do you think looks most professional, fun, vibrant, you know? Make sure that you add, and this is also like very, so if you can see here, there's some, definitely with every question, read these descriptions, because you can see that, you know, there's some aspect ratio that you should abide to make sure these pictures look, you know, the best they can. the formats. And then there's also a video. So you can see here in Beans' video that they have added this like nice video. I mean, videos are sometimes the very hard part. But even if you have like, let's say, a deck that you can present at, that's fine. Or if you have kind of like you want to like, especially if you have a kind of more technical project, like walk us through your code or walk us through your demo or anything that you can kind of like put here. That can, because like people really like videos, and sometimes videos are even stronger than the text if they don't have time, or keep these videos also short and kind of and powerful. Make sure that you like really prioritize the content that you put in videos, and make it the most important. It's kind of the elevator pitch. So let's say if I always like say this, and I think like I heard it somewhere, so I'm not unique in this. But if you can envision yourself being in an elevator with either like an investor or your users, and you have to sell your product between the time that you go through your floor. So let's say, 3 minutes is pretty long, but let's say you have a very short amount of time. What would you say, right? What are the most important features that you would point out on your project in that conversation, right? How would you convince them? And so that is exactly what you should put in this elevator pitch, because people are not going to watch, a 20-minute or a 10-minute even like video about you explaining, right? It's too long. You need to capture them within the minute. So that's what this is for. We do have this as, because like it's a very important one, and it's also like really helpful for your, so even if you have, something short or just you presenting, that's also fine, but it is a required field. And you can actually upload it on YouTube or Vimeo. Make sure you put it to kind of like that people have like unlisted, but that people do have access, because in the past we have seen that there's no access to view it. So make sure to open up access. All right. Any questions about the links and visual assets so far? Let me see. If our GitHub repos are private, can we get GitHub IDs of the judges so that we can add them? Let's see. Yeah, so that's actually a really great point. I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I think that that you could definitely mention it in your submission. So let's say if you can put it in here, and then perhaps you can add some additional details in here. Like I have a GitHub here for reviewers. Please like request exit, or please like email, and then you can kind of see as well, because like depending on because like do note that the reviewers, because we actually have a distributed review panel, so both they're members of both the Stellar Development Foundation, but also the verified panel. So make sure that it's that is something that outsiders can view, right? Yeah, if that makes sense. And then because like otherwise, like it's also, if you don't have open source or you don't want to share, it's also fine. It's just like an extra element that helps. So another question for the video: is it expected to submit a good edited marketing video or an unedited Loom recording demoing the project and explaining the code? Both are fine, actually. Yeah. So you have to understand here that the audience of this submission is reviewers and the Stellar community. So we are not your users, right? So actually, sometimes marketing videos aren't even that good at all, because they are not speaking to the right audiences. And unedited Loom videos actually like can be really good to explain like how your product works, because people want to know, people want to be convinced that you know what you're talking about, that you have the expertise, that you have a good product, that your product works, right? That's what they want to know, like, because they want to back you. So it's a different kind of audience. So definitely like any type of Loom recording is great. Even if you don't want to be on camera, that's also fine. People do like to see a face to the thing, but it's also fine if you don't, right? But yeah, indeed, like something that's you and that you did, that's also fine. Okay, so it's 7:03. I'm going through this quicker, I promise. So this is actually a bit more of a legal section here. So Well, not only, but also, so information about the submitters. What are the full legal names? Again, I mentioned that this is for internal use only, will not be shown on your public project page. And then, so this is just for like legal sense. Then it says here, I'm applying as a individual, so individual developer, let's say, a team of individuals or entity or organization. So if you are applying from an organization, you have to tick. You can see that there's a lot more fields popping up here. So, and these are all like, so we are actually creating a little like company profile for you. There's a few things that will be added to there, including kind of your company name, kind of where you're incorporated and kind of a short description. But a lot of these company related questions are actually for internal use only, and will not be shown on your public project page. So it's more for our legal team to check, because like with this program is fast moving, and so we do need to do a little bit of kind of like the due diligence parts of and some questions. And these are also all legal questions here. So if you do our company, so you can answer them. If you have any questions about these questions or how to answer them, just please like email communityfund@stellar.org, and we can get you in touch with our legal team to provide any additional information. All right. So that is more like, I can quickly just, let's say if I'm a team of individuals, right? Then it says how many members of your team, including yourself, will be actively involved. And we want to know how big your team is, and add a public bio about you and your team. And if I said the previous sections were important, this is really, really important. This is a really important section. So I know that a lot of these sections are really important, especially if your team is kind of in development. If your project is in development, like we kind of there's more like betting on your team instead of on your product, right? So let the community know who you are, like add links, but most importantly, like why are you and your team set up for success to build this project? So it's like, why, like, do you have, like, let's say, have you been part of, like, even if you have already completed, let's say, Stellar Quest, like, is there anything that you can prove that you have, like, the right Stellar or Sorbonne experience, or, experience with the languages, or maybe, like, prior business experiences, right? Like, anything that you can add, and there's a little bit of a, a little bit of a thing here that you can use, but anything that you can add that would kind of add any skills or experiences or really add value, kind of like make sure, like, why is your team set up for success? Like, why not some other team, right? That's how you should answer this question. Like, why your team? Why should we fund you? And so that's a really important part. Like, what is your prior experience? What is your skills? Any project you have already built on Stellar? Like, how long have you been into this ecosystem? There's a lot of things you can actually add here that would add value. And let's say also, like, I know that there's been some, obviously there people do want to know who you are, but if you're uncomfortable with, with that, and you can also choose an alias, but that doesn't mean that you can shy away from kind of your skills or prior experience. It's especially important because, let's say, if you're building a large project, you have to like make sure that you have the engineers also available to work on this project. So very important section. Let them know who you are. This is very important. Make sure to really answer this, like, why you and not someone else. And there's also some more, also in this resubmission, you can see helpful resources here. Overall recommendations, like it's about prove that you're the best people for the job, right? That's really important. And then there's some like internal, again, like for our like diversity stats and kind of knowing like who you are. Please answer this. Honestly, this also won't be shown on your public project page, but it's really for us to know like how we're doing in terms of like marketing and whatnot. This is also the email addresses. It's for internal use only, will not be shown on the project page. Discord names will also be not, this field won't be shown on your project page, but yeah, if you add your Discord names here, it will be shown. This is public bio, as you can see. Definitely put your Discord names all on here, because all of the teams' Discord names on here because I do track like who is on the Discord and whatnot, and then I can add you the right rules and whatnot. So make sure to also add the numbers behind the username. Very important. Otherwise, I don't know exactly who you are because the only the username is not sufficient. That is more for that I can add rules and whatnot. All right. So last few things. Where did you hear about SCF? This is very important because I want to know where you heard about it. Let's say if you're referred by someone, Stellar.org, anything else or other, let us know. I want to know where you're from and what you've done before. And then there's also this is a new section on this SCF submission form. Do you want to ask someone to write a reference for you? This is totally optional. Let's say you can say no, I don't. But if you choose yes, then you can actually send kind of a request for someone to send a nice reference to you. And the people that you can send this, I wouldn't send to SCF because you can just simply like referred by someone and you say like this person is SCF and we'll ask them. But especially if someone is, let's say, like your customer or someone we might know or someone in the ecosystem, you know, they can vouch for you basically. It's an optional thing. If you do this, make sure that they actually do it before the submission deadline, because otherwise we might not be able to see the review before. So yeah, and that's it really. We went through the entire submission form. It's not a small one, as you can see, but there is definitely value in it, and I'll definitely have some questions right now. So all right, so I'm taking a look at the chat because I've been actually answering all of these questions from the chat if you haven't seen it. And I can see here a question from Bobby. Be happy, sorry, I'm not sure how important is a reference, like who is best to choose? And I mean, it's totally up to you. I think especially like if you are new to the ecosystem, and references can be a great help for someone else to validate you. And I think oftentimes it could be someone from the ecosystem that you're working with, or one of your partners or users, or someone, you know, that is generally known in the the reviewers would generally know can vouch for you. It's like a recommendation. It works pretty well, right? Yeah, okay. So, okay, Peter asks, if accepted, the first deliverable would be the following month. Yeah, I think so. Let's say, yeah, you can definitely, the estimated completion date, you could put it as the submission at the same time as the submission deadline. So let's say, let me see, I haven't done all of these things on here, but if you go to awards and you have the next submission deadline. So the next one will be, if you just go to your calendar, let me see, I can go to my calendar here as well. The next one would be after March, April 5th, 16, I think. Yeah, I believe so. Let me see. Let me double check because it's 4 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, actually, yeah, it's April 9th. So you could, like for this round, you could put April 9th as your first deliverable estimated time of completion. Okay, let me see. Does it answer your question, Peter? Yes, thanks. Okay, are there any more questions? Because I know we're a bit over, and you know, there's oh wow, there's still like around 30 people on the call here. So definitely, if you have any more questions, feel free to either speak up if you have the right rules, or if you don't, put your questions into the chat on the right side of the screen. I'll wait a few more minutes for people to answer questions, for people to put in questions. And this can also be, let's say, if it's kind of related, maybe not to the submission form, but it's related, I'm also happy to answer that right now. Okay, the deadline is March 12th. Yeah, so actually we put the deadline at 11:59 PST, so it's on Pacific time. So you have actually 3 extra hours. Yes. But anyway, it's like making sure that you have just making sure that you do it like I would start earlier rather than later, because even if you, let's say if you submit like early, there's no like benefit to it, but you can definitely like you can make sure that because like it won't be reviewed earlier, but it definitely helps to make sure that you don't like are not too late, because like this submission form does have like a cut, like I have to add the hour and you cannot submit after that. And let's say you did submit and you want to like, you realize you added or you forgot something, you can ask me to open up submissions for your project. I can do that. So no problem. As long as it's not like, let's say 1 hour before the deadline, right? Because I'm obviously not going to be out and about on Sunday night on my computer. So yeah. Make sure to do that on time. But yeah, for the rest, you can just save your draft, and I think that's a great way to kind of get going. And when you're really sure, you can hit submit. And let's say like if you don't feel comfortable, like there's going to be you can just wait until the next deadline as well. And there are going to be deadlines every 4 weeks, so there's lots of chances to submit. Okay, Julius is asking, can we submit multiple Git repos associated with one project? Yeah, because our project has multiple GitHub repos with codes that have been actively pushed into one. Yeah, so I think like you could choose like, if you see here in the and the GitHub, like you can choose one here, and then you can just add additional things here. You can just say like GitHub repo for, blah, 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 blah. And then you can just hyperlink this with your GitHub repo, and you can just add more and more. So that's, people will also see that. Yeah. Perfecto. Wait, I see that people are typing, so I'll wait another minute before I end this session. Don't be shy. Definitely ask questions now, because I can. It's a bit easier for me to answer over speech than over writing sometimes. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I hope this has been really helpful to people. This whole session, because like I really want to make sure this is we're changing a lot. We've changed a lot of things in the Stellar Community Fund, and I want to make sure that each of the questions, it's very clear to people what's going on, that we can all kind of like learn from each other. And also like, let's say like if you are a submitter and you're going through this and something doesn't make sense, or you run into any issues, like feel free to just ask in support or like reply kind of to the email. There's actually like this very like once you submit, it's kind of interesting, like you can see my submissions. I think like you have to do it after you submit, but you can kind of see like all of your things. So you see that I have a lot of tests here. But you can like, I think there's a way to also like message within the platform and on email. It's quite nifty, so definitely check that out. Yeah, and let me see. I don't think, we don't have any more questions, so I'm going to call it a day. Yeah, the I know. Yeah, I make such great test projects. I would not accept any of them, of course. They're horrible, but they serve their point. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This was a pleasure to be with you here all today, and thank you so much for your insightful questions. I'm very happy that hopefully like your questions have been answered, and if not, you're looking into it later on and you have any questions, like feel free to just either email or send something in support. And yeah, I hope I wish you a great rest of your day and good luck at submitting to SCF. All right. Have a good one, all. Bye-bye.